They thought they could take everything. They thought they could scare me off the land my great-great-grandfather built with his bare hands. But they forgot one thing. This land has weathered storms, droughts, and every greedy outsider that tried to take it. And I'm not about to let a power-drunk HOA and a couple of wannabe cowboys with a pistol take what generations fought to protect. It all started on a clear Saturday morning. Rusty, my old hound, was lounging on the porch, head on his paws, eyes half closed. I had coffee in one hand, surveying the fields, the fences, the pond that sparkled under the morning sun. For a moment, it felt like the world was at peace. Then I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. 2 trucks rolled up. Karen, the HOA president, stepped out in her bright red power jacket, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp. Beside her was Marcus, tall, lean, wearing that cheap badge the HOA printed for him, hand resting on his hip like he thought he was something. They didn't even say good morning. Karen started barking about easement violations, about encroachments, about how the HOA has decided to reclaim this land. I sipped my coffee, let her talk. She kept going, telling me I needed to vacate, that my fences were improper, that I had 1 week to clear out or face legal consequences. Marcus stepped forward, thumb grazing the holster on his hip. "You're gonna comply, right?" he said, trying to sound tough. I set my coffee down slowly, looked him in the eye, and I said, "You need to leave my land now." That's when Marcus did it. He pulled the gun, pointing it low, but enough that I saw the metal glint in the morning light. Rusty's head shot up, a growl rumbling low in his throat. Karen smirked. "Maybe now you'll understand who's in charge," she said. But in that moment, fear wasn't what I felt. It was a cold, burning calm. The kind you feel when you know this isn't just about a fence or a piece of paper. It's about everything. I raised my hand slowly, told Marcus, "Put it away before you do something you can't take back." He didn't, and that's when I called the sheriff, with Marcus's gun still out, with Karen yelling about authority. I dialed, calm as I could be, explaining that I had an armed trespasser on my property. They didn't think I'd call their bluff, but I did. The sheriff's deputies rolled in fast, tires skidding on the gravel. Marcus tried to act tough, waving his fake badge. Karen kept shouting about HOA jurisdiction. But the deputies weren't listening to them. They were looking at me, at Marcus's gun, at Karen's rants. They disarmed Marcus, handcuffed him without a word. Karen screamed, threatening lawsuits, saying the HOA would take everything. But as they put Marcus in the cruiser, one deputy turned to me and said, "Mr. Sullivan, you want to press charges." And I looked Karen dead in the eye and said, "Oh, we're just getting started." They tried to break me that morning, tried to take the ranch with threats and a gun. They didn't realize they just gave me every reason I needed to take everything from them, legally, because when someone tries to steal your legacy, you don't back down. You fight. And I was ready to fight them with every ounce of the stubborn blood my family left me. They thought it was over after Marcus got cuffed. They thought they could come back with paperwork, with fines, with threats typed up on HOA letterhead. They didn't know who they were dealing with. A day after the sheriff took Marcus away, I got a letter taped to my fence from Karen, notice of violation, claiming my fences were on HOA-managed land, demanding $1,500 in fines. I laughed because here's the thing, this ranch has been in my family for 150 years, before there were roads, before there was even a neighborhood. Karen thought a piece of paper could erase that. She was about to learn. I called my lawyer, old Mr. Jenkins, who's been around long enough to know every property line in this county. He pulled the deed. He pulled the maps. He pulled the survey. And guess what? Karen and her precious HOA, they didn't own the land they were standing on. Turns out years ago the HOA expanded their walking trail, picnic area, and a so-called community park, all onto land that still legally belonged to my family. They just assumed no one would check. Well, I checked. I stood at the fence line with the GPS in my hand, walking the property markers with Mr. Jenkins beside me. Each beep from the device was like a drumbeat of justice. Karen saw us. She came storming out of her house in that red blazer, face flushed. "What do you think you're doing?" she shouted. I looked up, smiled, and said, "Just checking what's mine." She didn't like that, not one bit. The next morning, the HOA so-called security 2 volunteers with clipboards showed up taking pictures of my property, trying to intimidate me. I invited them for coffee. They declined. Instead, I got another letter, this one saying the HOA would be taking legal action. If I didn't pay their fines, they gave me 7 days. 7 days to bend to submit. They didn't realize I wasn't planning on backing down. I was planning on buying everything. See, with Mr. Jenkins' help, I found out the HOA was broke. They were deep in debt from a shady landscaping deal, with a balloon payment due in 3 weeks. And the land they used for their community events, that land was collateral. All I had to do was wait, so I kept to myself, working the ranch, pretending to ignore the HOA threats. Karen and her minions walked by daily, smirking, dropping off letters I didn't read. I kept my calm, but every time I looked at that land, my family's land, I felt the blood in my veins heat up. They tried to find me for grilling on my own land. They tried to threaten me off my own soil. So I was about to do the one thing they never expected. I was going to buy the debt they couldn't pay, and once I did, every inch of land they loved for their precious community events, picnics, and HOA meetings would be mine. All legally, all quietly, because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's watching the people who tried to take everything from you lose everything instead. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat on the porch, the old rocking chair creaking under me, Rusty snoring at my feet, stars overhead, wind moving through the fields. I thought about my dad, about how he used to say, "Son, this land is more than dirt. It's who we are." I promised him I'd protect it, and now it was time. The next morning I put on my hat, grabbed my keys, and drove down to the county clerk's office with Mr. Jenkins. We filed the paperwork, the debt note on the HOA collateral. Purchased. It cost me a chunk of savings, but you know what, it felt right. Karen had no idea. 3 days later, the HOA held their big summer festival. Tables, balloons, kids running around, neighbors chatting like everything was perfect. Karen strutted around in her red jacket, acting like a queen, smiling, waving, all on the land she thought was hers. I parked my truck by the gate, stepped out, and just watched for a moment. Felt the wind on my face. Then I walked in. Karen spotted me storming over, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Mr. Sullivan, you can't be here. This is HOA property." I didn't say a word, just handed her the paperwork. She looked down, confused. Her smile faded. She read the papers again, then again. Her face turned white. She started yelling, "This isn't legal. This is harassment. You can't do this." I stayed calm. "Karen, you're trespassing." People started gathering, whispering, neighbors pulling out their phones, recording. She tried to grab the papers from my hand, but I held firm. "Get off my land, Karen." The sheriff's deputies rolled in, lights flashing, but no sirens. Same deputies from before. They got out, looked around, nodded at me. Karen tried to spin her story, flailing her arms, pointing at me, yelling about illegal land grabs and intimidation. The deputies listened, then they turned to her and said, "Ma'am, he owns this land now. You need to leave." The silence that fell over that festival was heavy. Neighbors stepped back, unsure. Karen stood frozen, mouth open, face red. Then slowly, she turned and walked away. Marcus, who was there trying to hand out flyers, dropped them and followed her, head down. The deputies looked at me, gave a nod, and then one of them smiled. I turned to the crowd. "I'm not here to ruin your day," I said, "but this land is mine. It's always been mine." I told them the truth about what Karen had done, about the threats, the fines, the fraud. They listened, silent. Some of them nodded, a few even clapped, and then I walked back to my truck. Rusty was waiting in the front seat, tail thumping. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Saw the crowd dispersing, Karen standing alone by the tables, trying to hold on to whatever power she thought she had left. It was over. She tried to take everything from me, tried to take my family's legacy, tried to bully me with her fake authority and threats. And in the end, she lost it all. Because when you come for a man's land, you better be ready to lose yours. The morning after the festival was quiet. Too quiet. I walked the fence line with Rusty trotting beside me, the dew soaking my boots, sun coming up, turning the fields gold. I felt peace for the first time in weeks, but I knew it wasn't over. Because power, hungry people like Karen don't let go easily. 2 days later, I got a letter hand-delivered, Karen's last stand. She was suing me, claiming emotional distress, defamation, trespassing. It would have been funny if it wasn't so desperate. I sat at the kitchen table holding that letter, coffee steaming, staring out the window where the sun hit the pond. I remembered my dad's voice again. Don't let bullies push you off what's yours. I picked up the phone, called Mr. Jenkins. He just chuckled, let her try. The court date came fast. I showed up in jeans and a clean shirt. Karen came in, red jacket, hair pulled tight, lips pressed in a thin, angry line. Marcus trailed behind her, looking like a ghost of himself. She thought this would be her victory lap, that she could use the system to get back at me. But the judge looked at the paperwork, the land deeds, the videos, the sheriff's reports. And then he looked at Karen, and he dismissed her case, just like that. Karen tried to argue, her voice shaking, saying the HOA had rights, that I was a danger, that I had humiliated her. The judge raised a hand, silencing her. Ma'am, you're lucky you're not the one being charged. Karen's face fell. She looked around, desperate. But there was no one left to help her. Because while she was busy trying to break me, she didn't realize she was exposing herself. Neighbors came forward, they shared stories, the threats, the harassment, the misuse of HOA funds. Turns out, Karen had been funneling HOA money into special projects, personal landscaping. Luxury trips, she claimed, were HOA business. An investigation started, slow, quiet, but steady, and then came the final blow. Karen was removed as HOA president, Marcus resigned, and the HOA dissolved, gone. They tried to take my land, tried to break my family's legacy, tried to use fear, fines, and even a gun to get me off my land. But in the end, I own the land, I own the collateral. And without their precious HOA, Karen had no power left. Neighbors started coming by, shaking my hand, thanking me. They were tired too, tired of the threats, tired of the bullying, tired of living in fear on the land they paid for. And me, I sat back on my porch, Rusty at my feet, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over the same fields my father once worked, and I felt peace, because this wasn't just about land. It was about standing up, about not letting fear win. Karen learned the hard way, you don't mess with a man protecting his family.